Hey everyone, I'm K2 Knockout, and today I wanted to start to answer the question, what makes a movie good? And to do that, I wanted to take one scene from the new Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and I wanted to analyze it a little bit. And now, choosing one scene from a movie that's so huge and has so many memorable moments and so many awesome characters is a little bit crazy. But there's still one scene that really stands out as my absolute favorite. One scene that really shows top-tier, high-level filmmaking. And no, it's not this one. It's this one. You might be curious as to why, and I'm super excited to explain it. Then again, you might not be curious. You might just be laying in your bed sick of PewDiePie videos and super bored. Either way, let's jump right into the scene analysis for The Force Awakens. Oh, and, spoilers, by the way. 'Cause duh. So just to recap, in this scene, Kylo Ren has Rey strapped to an interrogation chair. He needs to get the map that leads to Luke Skywalker. And since Rey has seen the map and Ren can't get his hands on the droid, he decides that he's going to just get that information from her. And she's not going to just tell him where it is, because then, the movie would just be over. That'd be lame. So he decides that he's going to use the Force to rip it out of her mind, like he did to Poe earlier in the movie. It might seem a little strange that I like this scene so much in particular, especially when you consider that it's essentially just two actors going, with no special effects added, but believe me, that's what makes this scene so awesome. This is an important scene for many reasons. It's the point in which the momentum begins to shift in the favor of our main characters and the pendulum swings back. But more importantly, it introduces a lot of character development for both Kylo and Rey. Up to this point, we haven't seen Kylo without his mask on, so the audience is trying to figure out what his deformities are, or why he wears the mask in the first place. On the other side of the chair, Rey has no idea that she's a Force sensitive, even though we, as the audience, found this out just minutes earlier. So in this scene, we learn about Kylo, Rey learns to use the Force, however badly that might be. We discover that Kylo is not the flawless badass that we once thought, and Rey gains momentum that's going to carry her through to the final act. That's a tall order to get for just one scene, especially one that has so little dialogue. Yet unlike most other similar scenes from other movies, or even other scenes in The Force Awakens, everyone walked away from this scene understanding the same things. No one I talked to was lost while this played out. Everyone has pretty much the same understanding of what went down. This is most impressive when you consider that the action in the scene is the use of the Force. And the Force is basically just magic. Let's face it, it's essentially magic. And usually in movies, when two magic forces meet, it looks something like this. But we've already established, not only in this movie, but in other Star Wars movies, that the Force is invisible. You can't actually see it. And yeah, sometimes in video games they put a little blue hue there, but that's just to communicate to you, the user. But we already know that when we're watching a Star Wars movie, you can't see the Force as it's acting on an object. So when they're using the Force in the scene, it already has to be invisible, so they can't use special effects to communicate what's going on. So representing it visually is not an option. And without being able to visually represent the struggle between these two, the storytelling for this scene gets very challenging. And the other way to fill that gap would be with just dialogue. Like, I'm going to reach into your mind. No, I'm going to resist you. How can you resist me? This is impossible. But that would be really bad, like a 90s Saturday morning cartoon or Michael Bay movie. It's just terrible. In fact, in the scene, once the struggle starts, the only dialogue is to acknowledge to the viewers that the fight is over.
You're afraid that you will never be as strong as Darth Vader.
Think about it. It's a powerful scene that conveys a lot with no dialogue. I mean, name one other scene in this movie that does that. So it basically plays out like this. I'm not going to give you anything. We'll see. And then they shut the hell up until she claims victory. So with no dialogue, no special effects, no cheap outs, they managed to portray a magic fight without losing anyone in the audience. So how? Well, they masterfully used the few tools they had left. Those tools are cinematography, acting, on the parts of Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley, lighting, and sound. So let's talk about the one that pretty much everyone gets, right off the bat, the acting. Pretty straightforward. Rey struggles, while Kylo seems calm and cool. Rey stands firm, then Kylo seems surprised, almost scared, etc. I'm glazing over this because it's pretty self-explanatory. But if it weren't for these two nailing their performances in this scene, none of this would have worked, and everything else that they had done would have been for nothing. So, applause to those two. Next is the cinematography. Most moviegoers don't realize that the movies that they're watching are made with something that's lovingly called film language. It is the way or rules by which you film a scene in order to tell a story. This doesn't mean that there's a checklist that you have to abide by, but more so means that there's a way that your brain will naturally want to link different clips, shots, or scenes together. Consider it being the movie's grammar. If the shots are out of order, it's confusing. If they seem to carry a different tense, it just feels wrong. Just as said this in wrong tense is noticeable weird. Alright, back to the scene. Now that we know about film language, let's take a look at how it's used. First, look at where each character is in relation to the edges of the frame. And not just when they share the screen. Here, I'll draw 4 squares in the frame and show you a still from each shot. Notice how the quadrants are divided. The fact that Rey's eyes never leave the top left quadrant is no accident. Neither is the fact that Kylo's never leaves the top left. This gives each character, even though Kylo's walking around and talking the whole time, their own clearly defined space. Consider this like the battlefield for the scene. Even when it cuts away to the far wide shot, they still occupy the same spots in the frame. So 1, each character has a zone in the frame in which you're watching, regardless of the camera angle or editing. Second, look at how each character is shot as the scene progresses. Rey starts out small, and in each shot of the scene, Kylo's hand is protruding into the shot, even when he himself isn't in the frame. This is to amplify her helplessness and to reinforce that he's intruding. However, as the scene progresses, she begins to fill more and more of the frame, and Kylo's hand takes up less and less. As she starts to win, she is literally pushing him out of the frame, until just before the end, all that he has left is a finger. Additionally, her size relative to the frame changes throughout the scene. Each time they cut back to this angle, she appears larger. She is gaining in strength, and it shows by how commanding she is of the frame. In the end, she takes up 2 whole quadrants, and Kylo finally reduces in size as he leaves the shot. So that explains the progression of the fight and who was winning, but how does everybody know what was happening with the invisible Force magic? Well, that's where the camera movement and acting comes into play. I'll put a dot in the center of the screen so that you can see the main focal point of each shot. The dot isn't moving, it's only there as a guide to show you where the exact center of the shot is. As the scene plays out, the focal point is on Rey, because that's where the Force is being directed. But as the momentum shifts, it moves away from her and onto Kylo. This is most noticeable when compared to the last time we saw him do this, when Kylo Ren mind-raped Poe Dameron at the beginning of the movie. Keep in mind, Poe couldn't fight back in that scene, and he got wrecked by Kylo. Once Kylo starts his little mind trick, the focal point is on his hand, because that's where the Force is. Then it literally shoots onto Poe, and then never leaves. So anyway, back to Rey. Once she begins to fight back, the focal point of each shot is never truly on her. And as the scene plays out, it creeps closer and closer to Kylo. Next, in order to show the defeat, and to further develop Kylo Ren as a character, they used lighting changes to show his state of mind as he began to lose. This is from just before he tries to reach into Rey's mind. Notice how his head is cocked to one side, his face is bright, and the contrast is high. He looks like a villain. He looks confident. But now look at this. This is the frame immediately after she says, "You're afraid," basically telling us that she just won. Notice how the bright highlights are gone and they're replaced with a warm orange. The contrast is more bland and uniform, and all in all, he looks like a scared little boy. So he goes from a villain to a scared kid. Because that's what he is, really. He's just a scared, misguided kid that thinks he's some crazy badass. That's why he loses these fights later. That's why he's always in pain and he's so obsessed with his grandfather. He throws temper tantrums and makes rash decisions. He gives into emotion and isn't the well-trained, super-disciplined badass we once thought. One of the points of this scene is to reveal that to the audience. The final shot of Kylo in this scene is him, smaller than he has been so far, looking actually frightened at Rey, and then to really drive that feeling home, the next scene starts with this.
She is strong with the Force, untrained but stronger than she knows.
Look at that tiny guy getting scolded by his literally gigantic boss. This is probably the first time that Kylo Ren has actually been opposed by someone since he first rose to power, and he crumbled. The last thing I want to show you is the sound. When you want to visually represent sound, it looks like one of these. This is the sound of the scene as it plays out from the beginning. Typically, when a scene has dialogue, it looks like this.
Where am I?
You're my guest.
Where are the others?
You mean the murderers, traitors, and thieves you call friends? You'll be relieved to hear I have no idea. You still want to kill me?
When there isn't much dialogue, but there's still background music and sound effects, it looks like this. However, here's the point in which the dialogue ends. Check it out. The sound actually gets more intense once the dialogue stops. That means that there's more going on audibly when there's no dialogue than there is when people are having the conversation. But that's not the coolest part. The exact moment that Rey gains control and begins to speak once she is won is right here. This is the point that Rey realizes that she's gained control. There is a clear and dramatic shift of tone in the sound in this moment. Also, this bevel here is when she leans forward to make a push into Kylo's mind. He staggers, then it cuts back to Rey for her to deliver the line that turns Kylo back into the scared little boy that he really is. This scene is the unmasking of Kylo Ren in more ways than one. We not only get to see his face for the first time, but we get to see how fragile he actually is for the first time. Also, take a look at Adam Driver from this angle. He totally looks like he could be Harrison Ford's son. Really good casting. Now look at that dramatic stop once he gives up and breaks the connection.
That you will never be as strong as Darth Vader.
So by taking a combination of sound, cinematography, lighting, amazing acting, and the context of the rest of the film, they were able to tell a really interesting story with no words and no special effects. And that's in a movie that is filled with massive locations, huge explosions, and grand chases. And in a movie with that much going on, it's really nice to see some real high-level, bare-bones filmmaking to tell a really interesting story. So that's what I have to say about the interrogation scene between Kylo Ren and Rey. I could actually go on a lot longer, but I figured that this is more than enough for most of the people out there. If you want me to talk about this more, or if you want me to do a scene analysis from another movie, let me know down in the comments below. I'd like to hear what you think. And if you think that I'm wrong, or that I misrepresented something in there, I'd like to hear your opinion too. Go ahead and tell me whatever you think about this video. Put it down there in the comments. And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do it. Not only does it help me out, but it helps you out, because you get to know when the next videos come out. You don't have to wait for somebody to share a link on Facebook. Just YouTube lets you know. Oh, and don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoyed the video. It really helps out the video in the search engine. Helps me get found by new people and helps the channel grow. The more that the channel grows, the more cool videos that I can post. It helps me level up. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. May the Force be with you, and as always, thanks for watching.